Hello, and welcome to the third video of StarFox Dark, a D&D game. I'm your host, DWL52. In the previous two videos, I covered the current timeline leading up to the events where my group has started playing. If you have not seen those videos, don't worry, there will be a link in the description. So without any more delay, let's get into it. Andros is walking along Venom with his son, both of them wearing a breathing mask, and each look up at the sky as a large carrier is readying to leave the planet. "Father," the boy says in Simian. "Yes, my son? Why are we invading them again?" The father gives the son a stern, unyielding look. "For all their vengeful ignorance, they spat upon my father and my father's father. They fear greatness and cower in piteous shadows. They are weak, my son. They deny us our rights, so we shall deny them their lives." The boy looks dismayed. "I'm sorry, father. I don't understand." The simian looks down at his son and smiles. "You are still young, but in time the answers will come." "Father? Another question, my son?" "Yes. How did you get so many to fight for you?" Andros smiles. "They don't fight for me, son. They fight for the beast." "The beast?" The simian kneels down to look his son in the eye. "All are born with a beast inside of them. It is a creature of terrible darkness and strength. It takes but a push to unleash that darkness, and those men, those good men, will shed their guise of righteousness and dignity. They will tear and rape and kill to sate that which cannot be sated. The rivers of Corneria will run red. Those men will toss children from the ramparts, slay their brethren, and worse, much worse. And the universe will be all the better for it. Darkness, my boy. Darkness will reign so that you and I may walk in the light." In the background, a battle carrier raises off the ground, its row upon row upon row of weapons gleaming in the sunlight. A couple million kilometers away on the planet of Corneria, we find Fara, a female red fox dressed in a military service uniform that she clearly is not happy about wearing, and General Pepper in his service dress. Both are on their way to a UCF meeting with all of the higher members of the Platis councils. The two of them banter back and forth over some of the notes that General Pepper had planned on reading. At first appearance, it looks as if the general in his old age has become rather scatterbrained, when in actuality he is just nervous about going in front of the council. The general is set to speak first as the delegates all take their seats. The room General Pepper is standing in is a large amphitheater with a stage front and center. The stage has on it several elevated desks behind a podium that is dead center in the middle of the stage, facing the crowd. Each important delegate is given a chair for themselves and an advisor, while press and media have chairs around the perimeter with guards standing watch between them and the delegates. As General Pepper stands to begin his speech, Prime Minister Vashni Nasari, a rather rotund female elephant, walks up on the stage and stands next to the general. Prime Minister Vashni Nasari asks to speak first, and despite Fara silently shaking her head as a warning, he gives her his time. Now, I cannot impersonate Nasari very well, but try to imagine a female voice coming out of the fat Gungan from Star Wars, complete with the jowl slinging and all. "It is with great joy on this day that I fully announce the immediate abolishment of the Cornerian Defense Force." The crowd has a somewhat heavy murmuring and a couple of vocal jeers. "I know that some of this may come as a shock, but the military is an entity out of control. None of us can forget Pepper's folly all those years ago." As she says this, she shoots him a rather dirty look, followed by one of gloating. "Warnings of a grand invasion, and yet nothing. Supposed slave refugees, and yet nothing." Some mild clapping coming from the audience. "The middle colonies have increased their production rates. Their insistence of violence has been on the heavy decline, and peace reigns supreme in the Lilat system. We no longer have a need for a standing military." There's some more clapping from the crowd. "And we will not be leaving the Lilat system unprotected. The military's resource budgets and duties will be merged with the newly expanded exploratory commissions. They will be our shield. They will be a bastion of knowledge and exploration. Now, at this point, the general does try to protest that it would take a unanimous vote on the parts of the defense, civil, and legal and exploratory councils to even put such an act into motion. General, there is no combat coming. There are no unseen enemies in the darkness. This body, this planet, will no longer yield to the harsh warmongering of the old war dog. The Lilat system is safe. It is time for you to retire with dignity and your reputation intact. About this time, a large boot goes flying at the hollow screen and breaks the focusing lens, causing the machine to shut down. The boot was thrown by a tall moose guy who goes on a tirade in words in a foreign language. Something like, and I'm gonna butcher this, Set gros vach ser nor mortatus. Apparently it's French for, that fat cow will be the death of us all.
Cette grosse vache sera notre mort à tous.
The moose that threw the boot gets up from his chair and goes over to retrieve it before sitting back down and securing it back to his foot. Sitting at a large briefing table are 5 individuals of various sizes and races. They seem to be paired off into 3 groups, leaving the last man by himself. The first group contains a gray squirrel wearing an aviator sunglasses, a black zip-up flight suit with extra pockets, a leather aviator's jacket, and military boots. Then there is the moose, who is wearing blue jeans, military boots, and a black trench coat that is barely hiding the set of GTU riot combat armor. The second group consists of a young purple fox with white markings in a pink sundress and combat boots, and a huge robot that looks like an odd anthropomorphic jackal that has neon green glowing eyes. The person sitting by himself is a mole with black goggles, a white lab coat, blue jeans, a green shirt, and purple boots. Well, that was smart, says the robot. His mouth just opens and the words come out. No jaw motion to emphasize the words. What are we going to watch now? After about 20 minutes of sitting in silence, Fara walks into the briefing room, still in her dress uniform from earlier that day. Good afternoon, miss and gentlemen. I am Fara Phoenix. You have all been asked to come here today in regards to the new program that General Pepper is funding. This program will be called the StarFox Initiative. You'll be tasked with infiltrating, assessing, and defending Corneria against enemies, both foreign and domestic. As she has started her little speech, the gray squirrel reaches into his jacket pocket and produces a small metal flask, takes a swig, and then puts it back, and before interrupting her. So, kinda like what me and Chocolate here have been doing for a while now, he says. Sort of. We want you to take a team of cadets and train them to be the next generation of combat troops and pilots. Before she can get much farther into her speech, the robot cuts her off. I think we need to discuss payment first. We are bounty hunters, not teachers. If you're going to waste our time, we demand to be compensated for it. And you will. We have contracts already written up and ready to be signed once everything is agreed upon. As she is saying this, she is pulling out data pads from a briefcase that was laying on a table along the wall. She passes them out to everyone and starts going over the forms. Now, before we begin, I would like everyone to introduce themselves. These newts, says the squirrel. I am called Chocolate Mousse, says the moose. Lilac Foe, but everyone calls me Lilly, says the fox. JAHXD 3535, Jackal-based assassination, hunting, and extermination drone, model number 3535, says the robot. You can just call him Jax, says Lilly. And I am the great scientist, Dr. Monteblanc Talpa, says the mole, looking around the room, expecting everyone to know all about him. You can just call me Monty. About 30 minutes later, after all stipulations and expectations are written and signed for, Fara then collects the data pads and hands them and the briefcase off to a female red panda ensign aide. Now that is out of the way, let's go for a walk, and I will give you a tour of one of the bases you will be based out of.
Good. Can we swing by the cafeteria first, then head off to the hangar bay? I need to feed my ship soon,
says the mole. Feed your ship? Questions Jax. What do you mean by feeding?
Oh, I'll show you later, but I created this substance called Bido.
The player then goes on to describe this goo-like substance that is technically alive but can be molded to fit any task you need. However, it is carnivorous and needs to be fed routinely. Obviously, this was a bit of a shock to our DM, and when the player came to him about the Bido idea, it was initially supposed to be like one of those living protein gel pack power inverters from Star Trek Voyager. It was supposed to be biomechanical, not this biological that resembles mechanical. Yeah. Anyways, back to game. So, the group all gathers their belongings and follow Fara out into the quarter. As they are walking along, the group comes across this thick glass wall. On the other side is a underwater training obstacle course meant to resemble Zero-G. There are several people with environmental suits that look like the NASA spacesuits that we use today. Off along the wall to the right is one person trying to get over an obstacle and is attacked by 3 others. The 3 grab the individual and start trying to pull the helmet off. After a second or two, they succeed, and as the helmet comes off, a huge puffball of wool expands in the water. The 3 start to grab their stomachs and float away with their chest convulsing. They're obviously laughing at their success. But they seem to be laughing too hard and don't realize that the sheep that they just messed with is pulling out their airlines. With a quick jerk, and the 3 go from laughing to clutching at their necks and helmets before all 4 make a mad dash for the surface. Fara sighs deeply. Those 3 are troublemakers. Keep an eye on them, or you will regret it. I like them. They fight as a team and will make guerrilla fighting that much easier, says Jax. Once at the surface, the 3 take off their helmets and reveal that all 3 are hyenas, and all have an oddly similar look about them. They are brothers, if you couldn't tell. I don't know how they did it, but all 3 are great pilots, but average students. Just a tip, if you want them to impress you, give them an objective, and then tell them only one person can win. Throw them at 100 people, and I bet one will always win. About this time, a large crocodile swims past the glass, looks at the group, gives a wink to Fara, and then makes a beeline for the group of coughing hyenas. That would be Dwayne the Croc Johnson, one of our instructors. Dwayne rises slowly out of the water behind the hyenas, staring them down. They clearly don't see him, because in one swipe he hits all 3 across the back of the head.
Now, if you will come this way.
Fara then leads them down a few more corridors before finally leading them to the cafeteria for lunch and then out to the hangars to check on their vehicles. While there, Monty brings over a large chunk of meat to his POW mech. The head mechanic for the base comes over to check out what he is doing. They have a quick conversation about what the mechanic needs to do to keep this thing fed, and he has the same confused reaction that we all did. Until Monty opens up a panel along the side that reveals a mouth with sharp, shark-like teeth. Monty puts the meat into this mouth and damn near gets his hand bitten off, as the teeth clamp down and quickly shred the meat to pieces before audibly swallowing and burping. Monty explains that it needs to be fed every 4 hours or it starts to look for food on its own. All I'm saying about this scene is this: Little Shop of Horrors. After the rather creepy hangar scene, Fara eventually leads the group on a brief tour of the base before taking them into a large briefing room with a podium up front. It is clearly supposed to be a classroom for up to 20 to 30 students. If you could wait here for a few minutes, I'll gather together the cadets and bring them here to meet you. I want you to interview them and decide which ones you will be training, says Fara. With that, she leaves the group again. About this time, our group had stopped to grab dinner, and it took a while for us to get back in the game. But when we did, the player in control of Monty goes, "I'm going to have Monty hack into the base computer system and put out a broadcast over the PA to order all the cadets here." It obviously didn't go over well with the group, and we spent about 10 minutes trying to explain to him that doing that was not a good idea, as Fara will be right back, and hacking into a basic computer is so not a good idea because of the repercussions. He eventually agrees to not do the hacking. So, in-game, about 15 minutes pass, and Fara with all the cadets start walking in single file. However, the hyenas try to enter shoulder to shoulder and get wedged in the doorway. They start fighting over who should be first, but stop once the female sheep from earlier drop kicks the center one out of her way. They grumble, but eventually take their seats. Dwayne walks in last and says, "Listen up. These are new instructors brought in to increase your training." He dead stares at the three hyenas. "So you three, keep quiet and listen." He turns back to the group, and his tone goes from gruff to calm and gentle. "Hello, I'm Dwayne, the senior instructor. This group has its problem children, but overall they're really good students, and look to be promising members to the CDF. I will leave them in your care, have them back here about 1800 hours for last meal." With that, he and Fara leave the room. "I am JAHX. Jax goes to say his full name, but Lilly cuts him off.
Jax. His name is Jax.
"We're here to evaluate you and decide which among you is worthy of being trained by us."
Yeah? And what are you, Holmes?
Says one of the hyenas.
He is clearly a robot, you dumbass,
Says the second one.
He looks like a weird dog,
Says the third. "The Lionheart wishes you three to shut up for 5 minutes, says the lion. "They clearly have important things to say, and you are being most rude." "Right. You will split up into 3 groups. Group 1 will come with me and Lilly. Group 2 will go with Newts and Moose, and Group 3 will go with Monty. Once released from your individual groups, proceed to the next one in the order of 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1. And I want to see you 3 split up, 1 in each group," says Jax. "Group 1, we will be proceeding into the woods just outside, and there we will be going over survival training and guerrilla warfare." At this point, a gorilla by the name of Simon speaks up. "Sir, what do you mean guerrilla warfare? Please don't attack me." "Gorilla, not gorilla. It's how to fight dirty when behind enemy lines."
Group 2 will be going with Moose and I to the rifle range. I'll be covering marksmanship,
says Nuts.
"And I will be covering hand to hand,"
says Chocolate.
Group 3 will follow me to the medical lab for a physical exam,
says Monty. If you're getting the picture of a blue glove being smacked, don't worry, we all got that feeling.
And afterwards, you will be taking a 500 question exam.
Anyways, this all started this weird montage where in the background we can almost hear that song, "Live to Win." Anyways, montage. So, yeah, we start with the montage where Jax is having all the cadets build a makeshift shelter and fire, all while briefing about how to survive. "Remember, you need to stay hydrated. If you don't have a spare gallon of oil," he holds up an oil can, which Lilly swaps out for a water jug, "a water bottle, you'll become very thirsty and may have your joints lock up." Newts, during this montage, is drilling cadets on how to shoot from various stances, from cover, and ultimately improving their marksmanship. After him, they go to Chocolate, who is sparring with 3 recruits at a time and wiping the floor with all of them. He will stop the sparring to show a cadet a better way to stand, or to show them various grapple techniques, or how to break out of those various holds. Finally, they go to the medical lab to get patched up from the base medic, and to get their physicals done by Monty. It's not your typical physical, as all he does is take blood and skin samples and then puts them into his little briefcase that he carries around before dismissing them to go take that 500 question test. And I have to highlight the sheer creepiness of Monty. Hours later, the cadets return to the cafeteria for dinner with the player group. After that, the group gets assigned to their own quarters and bunk down for the night. Now, something you need to know about the robots. They need to take an 8-hour cool-off time where they power down and vent all the heat built up from their internal systems. They do this to prevent their systems from going into a meltdown or from heat damaging their memory chips. So, my group made a joke that every time Jack shut down or started up, he created the booting sound up or shutting down from Windows XP. So while the group is down for the night, Jax has to be off in some bathroom cooling off. While this is all going on, General Pepper and Fara end up in another meeting with some senators and various other generals to discuss what is going on. They hit the topics of how the production of goods that used to come to the inner colonies are no longer being delivered, the fact that almost all of the violence from the wild frontier has stopped, and the fact that they have lost contact with Hypraxis, the Lilac Bee Observatory. Most of these don't seem like much by themselves, but as a whole spells out a bigger problem. And Pepper fears that it may be Andros pulling strings again. Sometime during this meeting, Senator Alexandria Katz comes in and pulls Fara out of the meeting. They talk about how a lot of the senators are worried about being defenseless. Even those who were outspoken about anti-military feel as if Nisari has gone too far. They fear that something dark is on the horizon. Now, Katz was okay with some light cutbacks and the merging of responsibilities, but she did not want the Nisari New Deal. After this meeting has come to a conclusion, General Pepper and Fara head up to North Base for some more work. While there, Pepper introduces Fara to Captain Albert Shears. He is supposed to come down to the academy and help the group train the cadets. While there, a Lieutenant Sanders finds Fara and informs her about a tachyon burst that they tracked. The burst originated close to the Albatross Memorial Graveyard and was sent to some coordinates that appeared to go nowhere. No dwarf planets, no asteroids, no space stations, nothing. Just open space. The signal was basically set on a vertical trajectory when looking at the system from a horizontal plane. Fara takes it to General Pepper and says that she wants to take a team out to investigate the terrestrial coordinates and see what's going on. Captain Shears will report to the academy and keep the cadets on point training. They are then given a small disarmed combat shuttle and return to the academy. The following morning, Fara and Shears meet up with the group before the cadets arrive. While walking down one of the quarters, they see some graffiti on a wall. It turns out that the troublemakers have gotten a hold of some spray paint and painted a good likeness of Jax on the wall. Across the top is the words, God of Death. Foreshadowing! Fara will have them clean this up later, but Jax is actually impressed by the detail and accuracy of the image. After this event, Fara hands Newts a pendant that has the emblem with his family's crest on it. Apparently, it was found in an old storage locker. More foreshadowing! Anyways, they meet up with the cadets and discuss the coordinates. Fara decides to take the player group, plus a couple of soldiers along to go investigate the terrestrial coordinates. This will allow her to assess the skills of the group. So, they all split up and leave the cadets with the instructors and Shears, while the group and Fara all get on the shuttle and take off. The location that they are flying to is called Albatross Memorial Graveyard. The Albatross Memorial Graveyard is the ruined remains of an old Hammerhead-class cruiser that valiantly sacrificed itself in a suicide ram against the Sadao mothership. When this ship crash-landed, it landed in the swamplands and impacted so badly that the work to excavate it would be too difficult and too costly. Along with the Hammerhead, a lot of other ships crash-landed in the area. After the bodies were removed and the smaller ships that could be moved away were out of the way, the government decided to turn the whole area into a large memorial park to allow the children of the future to look upon the heroes of old. Of the ships that are still in place, the ones too big to move have a plaque in front of them saying what they are and what they did. They are the Albatross, the Hammerhead class cruiser, and the Phalanx and the Gladius. Both of them are support carriers. So the flight from Academy City to the memorial takes about 2 to 3 hours flight time. The entire time the group is making jokes about what music to play. I am playing as Jax and go, okay, so I've got these very large ears. I have built-in speakers so that I may project my voice loudly. So what I am going to do is plug my finger up to a MP3 player and start blasting the song Long Tall Sally by Little Richard. If you got the reference, you're a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus. So anyways, we ended our first session while we are looking for a place to land once we are in the area. So that is it for today's video. I will be back later with the next episode where we get to see some real action. Have an outstanding day, and remember, keep calm and game on.